Yeah, let's go.
My name is Sheik Mozart and I'm here to explode important media topics with kids ministry pros. Whether you got a mega budget or just minimal dough. Welcome to the Kids Church Visual Show.
Hello and welcome to the Kids Church Visual Show with Sheik Mozart. I'm Sheik Mozart, and this is a show that wants to help you visually communicate the gospel to your kids. On this episode of the Kids Church Visual Show with Sheik Mozart, we're going to be exploring a simple item that can help you create a kids' church experience that is completely engaging and seamless. But first, we're going to go live to ask you, how much time do you normally need between service segments? Here we go. All right, question number 5. How much time do you need between segments?
So right now, for the past 3 years, I am Kids Church. Hi, it's me. I currently have one volunteer that onboarded this year. And so our transition time from segments is minimal at best, to the point where I don't use any sort of transitionary tools or digital tools unless I'm doing any kind of a costume character. So I have a few sketch characters that I'll do that have like minimal costuming. And so like I might throw up a 15-second video while I duck behind the puppet stage, put a funny hat on, and then, come back out for the Bible story or whatnot. But otherwise, right now, a lot of my transition is just me stating, okay, we're wrapped up our Bible story. We're going to start in on our main lesson for today. Just because it's me. And I don't really need a lot of time. We can just kind of roll with it.
We usually about maybe 5 to 10 seconds is what we try to transition from. Any longer than that, kids start talking to each other and wandering.
Oof, that's a tough one. I think it depends. How about this? I say my worst transition currently is going from response time to giving. So moving from response time to giving, I hate that transition. It doesn't matter if it's me or someone else. It's always clunky, always awkward. And so if we could have even 1 minute of some type of bumper, I could go for 30 seconds. So currently I'm using BGMC sessions videos to make that transition. Some of them are 2 minutes, some of them are 5, but just try to help. And even the start of them is just weird because it's so high energy right out of a response. So, I think that those are the types of things that like I want more of and need to find more of, make more of, whatever.
Yeah, to transition between, I usually have at least 2 to 5 minutes per transition. That allows them to actually move from, so if we're doing a game, I don't immediately expect them to be ready for a lesson, right? Because they need that they need to turn their fun, not necessarily fun brain off, but I don't know.
Oh, like 3 seconds. It depends on, I guess it depends on the segment itself. Because sometimes, like, let's say they're standing up from worship, it takes them a couple more seconds to like sit down after worship, those types of things. But we try to transition through stuff pretty quick. You don't want dead air.
I don't like having a whole lot of time transitioning. I think it's we're talking a 5-second, 15-second transition. Keeping it clean and fluid. It needs to feel natural. It needs to feel unpushed. But between transitions, it should be, the transition is just meant to be that. So maybe 3 to 5 seconds, actually. Something that introduces and moves us right into the next thing.
I think you have to be really mindful of the attention span of kids. I think there's a number out there, but it's like however many minutes times their age. And so you really only have a couple minutes with those young kids to hold their attention. So if you take a really long time with a long video to transition, you're going to lose some of your younger kids. So I always use transitions as a way to move people off the stage. If our praise team was up there and we needed a video transition to kind of keep the room focused at the front, so everybody's still looking forward, they're watching the video screens while things are transitioning. And so it helps them not to be disruptive, and also it helps the kids to see that something else is coming. So I would say 1.5 minutes is probably where you need to shoot for a transition video. Anything more than that is content, and you need to be aware of what you're putting in there and how much information it's giving.
Bumpers, transitions, intros, whatever you call them, they can go a long way in keeping your kids focused and engaged throughout your kids' church service. Bumpers and transition videos are normally 15 to 30 seconds long and probably not any longer than 1 minute. They're normally played between 2 segments or activities in your kids' church service and keep the flow and momentum of the service going. Let me know if this has ever happened to you in kids' church. You've just finished leading a kids' church game and all your kids are excited and focused on the front of the room. Next up, you're going to have someone come lead some worship songs. Unfortunately, it takes you a few seconds too many to get rid of the game props, and in just those few seconds, the room dissolves into chaos. And by the time your worship leader takes the stage, the focus is gone. That exact scenario has happened to me countless times when I've led kids' church services, and it happens to everybody. Bumpers and transition videos can provide that little bit of changeover time from one segment to the next with an element that's fun and engaging without being too taxing on kids' attention spans.
All right, so welcome back to the Kids Church Visual Show with Sheik Mozart. I'm Sheik Mozart, and I'm here with Corinne Noble, aka KidMinCorinne. Corinne, welcome to the Kids Church Visual Show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit, Corinne, about who you are, how you got into children's ministry?
Yeah, I mean, I have been in kids ministry basically my whole life. I felt called to kids ministry when I was 10 years old, when I was still in kids ministry, and just pursued it from there. Went to a Christian university, got my degree in children's ministry, which is a little rare, I think. I actually have a 4-year degree in it. But then I was a kids pastor for about 10 years, and now I'm just kind of doing my own thing with KMC Ministries.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about KMC Ministries, what kind of things you have available and what you do for the KidMin community at large.
Yeah, we do a lot. I mean, I do a lot of it myself, but I have a little bit of a team too. But we do consulting, speaking, we do like set design stuff. We do a lot of curriculum. We're constantly putting out preschool and elementary curriculum. So we just do a ton of stuff. And I also put out a lot of freebies that I just give away and bless the church with.
How did KMC Ministries get started?
Well, it really came out of, I started blogging as KidMinCorinne, and I was still a kids pastor at the time, full time. And I was blogging and kind of doing some conferences here and there. And then it grew into a curriculum company when I felt like God just randomly called me to start writing curriculum. And I kind of fought him on it a little bit, but then I committed and I've been writing curriculum ever since. And it's grown into consulting and speaking and just kind of spiraled out of there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very cool. And tell me, just kind of in general at first, why do you think it's important to use visuals in kids ministry and kids church?
Yeah, I mean, visuals are another way to get the kids' attention, right? I mean, kids are visual, and when we're just talking at them and we're not using our visuals like our screens, our lighting, all of those things to draw them in, I think we lose them very easily. They have very short attention spans. So anything that we can possibly use, any tools, any resources that we can use to draw them in, we should use. And a lot of us have access to the ability to use visuals. So we should be using them, and we should be using them, I think, intentionally and well.
In this episode, we're talking about bumpers and transitions. Could you just kind of give me your definition of what a bumper and a transition is, and also tell us why they matter for kids ministry?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely call them bumpers, but some people call them transitions. I mean, bumpers are just like bumpers and transitions are things you use in between elements. So, for example, maybe you're on your way from announcements to the rules, and you might show like a rules video. That would be a transition or a bumper that just draws the kids in, and then a person comes up and reviews the rules, or a bumper before worship that lets kids know that it's time for worship, and you get up and you come up to the front. It's just a way to transition the service using media rather than just using a person saying, hey, it's time to do this. It really just creates a more seamless transition. And I just love it because a lot of us have, stage teams that we work with in kids ministry, and we have a lot of different volunteers that are doing those different elements in the service. And sometimes those transitions are just ugly, if we're being honest. And you see a lot of like dead stage time where you really lose the kids' focus. I think it takes about like 5 seconds of a dead stage and nothing happening to lose the kids' attention. So I love using bumpers and transitions to just create those seamless transitions. And, it draws the kids in, it lets them know what's coming next. And it really does a lot of the work for you that, your volunteers might be dropping the ball on a good transition. That bumper does the work for them. And it also cues your volunteers. If the person up next is doing the offering and you've got an offering bumper, that's going to cue that person, oh, it's time for me to make my way to the stage and lead that next thing. So I think that they're super helpful for just creating quick and seamless transitions that also draw the kids in.
Yeah, and I love the way you talk about that, because I think with bumpers and transitions, it may feel like one of those elements that don't matter, that is just fluff, but it could really help in so many ways, starting with just the discipline and the general disposition of the room. Do you remember
Absolutely.
when you started using bumpers and transitions?
Yeah, it's hard to remember. I mean, I definitely didn't always use them. They really weren't like a thing when I first started in kids ministry. I'm trying to think, maybe like between 5 and 7 years ago, I would say would be accurate. Man, they just make such a huge difference. Like you were saying, like people think that they can be just fluff, and they can be. I mean, media can be just fluff in kids ministry, and I see people using it, in my opinion, in like the wrong way. That's just time filler or for fluff. But when you're using bumpers intentionally and correctly, that to tie things together, I think it's anything but fluff. It actually makes your services better.
How do you plan out your bumpers for a Sunday morning?
Yeah, I like to use, and this everyone has different preferences, but for me, like I know I have my video guy create brand new bumpers specifically for worship, game time, offering. Every year I have him create new stuff for that. So I have now I have probably like 7 different ones that I can rotate through if I want to. But I've also noticed that using the same worship bumper, the same game bumper, the same offering bumper for a while, anyways, for a few months with kids, it works well. Kids love familiarity. They do like a schedule. They like routine. And when they see that bumper, those regular attenders are going to see that worship bumper and they're like, oh, it's time to worship. They're going to get right up. They're going to come up to the front. They're going to start clapping. They're going to start jumping because they know that's what they're supposed to do at that time. So I do like to use the same ones for a while because I think that works well. I also change up like the message bumpers. I love to have a bumper that goes with like the series that we're in. So I'll use a different bumper for every series that we go into. So obviously that's going to be intentional and tie into the message and the series. But that's really how I choose it. I like to do some that are familiar and use them for a while. But then I'll change up the series bumpers and then also use like background music and stuff to create those transitions.
Yeah. And is there a particular way that most of your bumpers look? Are they all kind of different from one another? What's the average bumper look like?
They're pretty short. I mean, you don't want a bumper to be too long. You want it to be long enough to create the transition you want to create, right? So that's going to look a little bit different. Like a worship bumper for me is going to be a little bit longer. We usually do upbeat worship bumpers, not necessarily like a worship bumper for response time, because we actually use like at our church, and when I was a kids pastor as well, we use like a live person to come up and like start playing keys and like leading the kids live for our slower worship time, our response time. But for our upbeat worship, we usually use a bumper, and it's upbeat, it's exciting, it's a little bit longer, maybe like a minute, and it tells kids to get up out of their seats, tells them to come up to the front. It encourages them to clap and jump and like what worship is about. So that one's a little bit longer, but like something like an offering bumper is going to be a little bit different, a little bit more of like not as upbeat, a little bit more moderate. We don't want to get the kids too hyped for offering time. But it does like have a little bit of teaching text, and it's going to be a little bit shorter, just giving time for like the person who's leading that element to get up there. And then a game bumper is going to be, short, upbeat, exciting, just basically hyping the kids up about game time. So each one definitely does look different, and you want the music that goes in the bumper to really match the energy level of what you want the kids to bring to that element.
And what does your typical service structure look like?
We usually do like, I know you guys are going to do a countdown thing, but we'll do like a countdown, and then there's like, kind of a pre-service game time, and then like a welcome time, and then we'll use a rules video to transition into rules. And then we have like a kind of a birthdays and like a first time guest thing. And we don't have a bumper for that, but we do have like a moving slide and stuff that comes up on the screen that goes with that. And then we have like a worship time. We use that worship bumper that goes into worship. And we break up our upbeat worship from our slow worship time, which is at the end of our service. We use it more as a response. So we'll do a couple upbeat worship songs. We have that worship bumper, draws the kids into that. Then I think we do offering after that. Again, we have a bumper, and that's really cool to play that offering bumper as the kids are kind of going back to their seats from worship, play the offering bumper, and the person's coming up to lead that. And then I think we usually do, game. Game is either before or after that. I'm not sure. Kind of depends on the week. But we have a game time bumper, again, letting the kids know it's time for games. So then we go into game time. And then we have the message. Again, we have a bumper. So we have a bumper for almost everything, really. We have a bumper that goes with that series that leads the kids into the message. Then we have a response time where we usually have a live person up there leading worship from the keys, and we bring the kids up to the front. We have a altar time response. We do one or two slow worship songs, just depending on, how the kids are responding. And then we'll dismiss them off to small groups in their separate rooms as well.
Yeah, I love that you guys really seem to use bumpers to enhance the experience, and it seems like you guys have such a solid structure.
Absolutely. They're not fluff. They're just tying things together.
Are there any ways that you've used a bumper or transition in the past that's like super creative and specific just to you guys?
One thing that we do, I don't know if it's really considered a bumper. It kind of is like a rules video type thing. I don't know if people use those. Some people use those. But we like to do like a new like rules type thing when we're doing like a big new theme that's coming up, like maybe for the summer, something we really want to hype up. So like last year we did a power up VBS, and we did Super Mario Brothers. A lot of people did because of the movie coming out. But the kids were so hyped about it. So we decided we wanted to create a new rules video, like just for our kids that was like Super Mario Brothers themed. So my husband actually created this thing where it looks like Mario is like running down the hallway in our kids building. I don't know what he used, some program that makes it look like that. So he took video of the hallway, and then it's got Mario running down the hallway. And then he like runs through the kids' room doors and like runs up on the kids' room stage and like actually talks to the kids. And the kids just thought it was so cool. They were like, how did he do this? Like, it was just like mind blowing that he was like running down the hallway and on our stage. So that was really, it was personal. It was, our church building, and Mario was there, and the kids just thought it was really cool.
Yeah. How long was that video? Was the Mario video?
The rules video, again, I think it was probably like 1 minute, maybe a minute and a half. Like he ran down the hallway, he got on the stage, he like talked a little bit, introduced the rules, and then there were like clips from the movie and like that went along with each of the rules. And then, a thing that just said at the end, like, if you follow the rules, then everyone's going to have a great experience, that type of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are some general do's and don'ts for using bumpers and transitions?
Yeah, so I think that's where, you do have to be careful with media that it doesn't become fluff or distractions. So I did write down a few things that I could think of that I've seen. Either I've made this mistake or I've seen other people making this mistake with using visuals and bumpers in their ministry. I'll start with a positive. So here's a do. I would say choose. I'm going to add in some background music here too. Choose background music, choose lighting, choose visuals that are going to complement the tone and energy of the element that you're transitioning into. So this is so important, right? I mean, I think we've all used the wrong music or the wrong video at the wrong time, and we've had to rein the kids back in. So that sometimes that's our fault because we just use the wrong media. So we have to think about what energy level do we want from the kids during this element. If I want them to be hype and crazy and loud, then that's the energy level I'm going to bring in my bumpers and my music. But if I want them to be a little calmer, I want them to stay in their seats, I want them to focus, I don't want them talking, then I have to communicate that through my music and my bumpers as well. So I think a lot of us have made that mistake. So that's where the don't. Let's come in with the don't. Don't allow your media and visuals to be distracting. Sometimes they actually work against us when we use the wrong stuff at the wrong time. We don't want to use like I've heard background music with like a lot of lyrics. I mean, even good lyrics can be distracting if you're using background music with lyrics that's like too loud. And honestly, the kids are like trying to focus on the person talking, and there's music with lyrics playing, or even in your videos, if you've got music with lyrics, I feel like it distracts from whatever the video is trying to tell them. So I don't like to use a lot of music with lyrics during the service unless we're actually singing. So that's a big thing. Lighting, even like think about your lighting. If you have movers, you don't want your movers like racing around all over the place when you're trying to get the kids to like respond in like an altar time. They're like looking around, or you've got like a video or a moving background on the screen that's just like it's moving all over the place, and you're trying to get the kids to like pray and focus on God. That's not going to work. I mean, kids are so easily distracted, so we don't want the media to work against us. We want it to work with the elements that we're leading. Another be intentional about the media and visuals that you're using. I notice a lot of people just feeling like they have to use video or they have to use media so that they feel like their ministry's current or up to date. Yes, it is good to use media and visuals in our ministry, but we don't want them to just be filler. We don't want them to be time wasters. A lot of us don't have a lot of time with kids. They don't even come every single week. So we want to make sure we're not using videos and bumpers just to like say we did. We're using them intentionally and to work with what we're doing. And that's really the other don't. Don't just use them because you think the kids will like them, or throw up a video just because you're like, oh, the kids will like this. Make sure it ties into what you're doing that day. It ties into what you're teaching. It ties into the elements, and it helps your kids focus and engage in what you're actually teaching them about God's word that day. I mean, I think that visuals and media, like you said, they can really work with us, or they can work against us.
Man, those are some really good thoughts. Just to kind of land the plane, what are some final thoughts for a kids ministry leader who's just getting started, a kids pastor who's just getting started? Give me some final thoughts on using bumpers and transitions or media in general.
Yeah, I mean, for those getting started, I would say sometimes people feel really overwhelmed by, I think, the amount of resources and things that are out there nowadays. When I first started in kids ministry, or like even when I was a kid in kids ministry, there was so little out there, and now there's so much, and we really are so blessed, and in so many ways. But also people getting started, I think I see them out on like the Facebook pages, like they seem very overwhelmed. Like, where do we start? What should we use? What shouldn't we use? I would say, like, don't get overwhelmed. Start small, start with something that looks good, do your research. Don't just throw things up there. Make sure you really like look at what's out there, get intentional, pray over it. That's a big thing. And just make sure that the content that you're using is what's right for your ministry and for your kids. For the culture of your ministry. That's why there is so much out there. I say this all the time, like, there's nothing wrong with the fact that there's tons of stuff out there now for kids ministry, because every church needs something different. So what works for me may not work for you, and there's probably a resource out there that does work for you. So don't get tempted to be like, oh, I've got to copy this over here because that looks great. Like, that may not even work in your culture. So pray over it, research, and figure out what's really going to work with your kids. And that's going to take some trial and error sometimes, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Great stuff. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Well, I am on Instagram. I am KidMinCorinne on Instagram. I'm also KidMinCorinne on Pinterest. I do a lot of like creative stuff on Pinterest, create lots of boards for different series, different like times of the year, events, stuff like that. And I am Corinne Noble on Facebook, as well as KMC Ministries on Facebook. And then I have a website. It's kmcministries.com. And if you want to go just directly to my curriculum stuff, that's kmccurriculum.org.
Thank you for joining us on the Kids Church Visual Show with Sheik Mozart. I'm Sheik Mozart, and I want you to know that your Kids Church visuals matter. If you look at two different mixed up Rubik's Cubes, it might be hard to tell them apart. But did you know that there are over 43 quintillion different Rubik's Cube combinations? That's 43 with 18 zeros. Each one a different layout of colors with a unique path to restoration. The kids that step into your kids' church might all look pretty similar, but each one is made up of countless different stories and experiences, and each one with a unique way of learning and connecting to God. Our goal here at Church Visuals is to give you, the ministry leader, the visual tools that you need to help you connect with each and every child and to help them find their way to their Creator.
This has been a podcast presentation of Church Visuals. Executive produced by Carl Barnhill. Hosted and edited by Sheik Mozart. Title and show graphics by Jason Merrick. For more training to help you visually communicate the gospel in your children's ministry, visit churchvisuals.com.